You know, as Christians, we know many great things about God. Even anyone who has just been somewhat, maybe just told about living the Christian life, knows that as Christians, believe that God is with us, that He loves us, that He has an unlimited amount of grace for us, that no matter what happens, He's going to be watching over us and taking care of us. And those things are wonderful, great, and they are so very true. And I thank Him every day for those. But there is something else that we forget to mention about God sometimes, and that's the fact that God is in the business of testing us. On a daily basis, He tests us just to make us stronger in Him. I mean, you think about it as far as it goes. You think about school for a second. As it's getting back to start back up for the children and college soon after that. School is something that there's tests in all the time. You've got tests for this. You've got a test for that. Test to cover certain material. Midterms, finals. Test to pass a class. Test to get out of school. Test to get into a school. Even professions. There's tests to go into certain professional careers like doctors, lawyers, insurance agents. So many professions even today, there's a test for it. The fact of the matter is life is a test. Our life is a test. God is always testing us, but not for His pleasure. He's testing us, like I said, to make us stronger. Because even in those tests that you take during life, you're always having to, most of the time, the night before, you're cramming and you're memorizing, trying to get it all into your head, what you need to know for the test the next day, so that you'll remember it. So in essence, you could say that God is constantly testing us so that we're constantly trying to get in our head what's going on. So that we can remember the good things in life and remember what God is doing for us. The best example of this in the Bible is in the book of Job. It's in chapter, that's where our scripture is going to be at. It's going to be in chapter 2, starting in verse 1. But you know, Job is, to me, one of the greatest figures in the Bible. Not mentioned that much, but one of the greatest figures in the Bible just because of the fact that Job never forsook God. The entire book of the Bible dedicated to Job, 42 chapters, and he never forsook God. Not one time. Because of his great faith. But you know what's even more amazing about Job is that there is actual proof. And I'm not here to dispute this today, but there's actual proof, because Job is the oldest book in the Bible, that the story of Job could have happened before Abraham. Because the book of Genesis, the first 5 books of the Bible, were all written about 600 years after the book of Job. So before all the promises and all that, Job had this great faith in God. Job was kind of, in a way, someone we could look at to model ourselves after. Because in a sense, Job may have been the closest human there ever was to being like Jesus. But yet he was on the earth and gone long before Jesus.
Hello.
Job was even the type of guy that God bragged on. Wouldn't that be great to know that God's bragging on you today because of your great faith? That would be so wonderful. Job got bragged on by God. That's a great thing. Job chapter 2, starting in verse 1. Again there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan came also among them and presented himself before the Lord. And when the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on this earth and from walking back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Here he goes bragging on him. "That there is none like him on earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil. And still he holds fast to his integrity, although he incited me against him, to destroy him without cause." So Satan answered the Lord and said, "Skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bones and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life." To truly understand what's going on here, we have to go back and kind of give a brief update of what happened in chapter 1. In chapter 1, see this conversation between God and Satan, because that's literally what was going on here, was the conversation between God and Satan. This was the second one that had happened about Job. See, God had already given Satan free rein to take everything away from Job. So at this point, Job has already lost his family. He has lost all of his possessions, his livelihood. Everything that he had is completely gone. All Job has got is literally his health and his life left. That's all he's got left. And see, Satan in this conversation is thinking, okay, God. He didn't fall from you on this. But all I did is just take away things that were important to him. Let me put a little pain on him. A little actual fleshly pain. Put some actual suffering on him and see what happens. You know, the crazy thing about that is God said, "Okay, Satan, go for it. But spare his life." So literally at this point, you have to look at the fact that Satan now has free reign over Job's life. He can do anything to it except for take it. He has free reign to do that. But what is the best part about it is, over the next 41 chapters of Job, throughout the book, you find Job never stepping away from his faith. He never turns against God. He stays strong with God the whole time. But even more than that, there's even times he praises God. He lifts up a praise to God. Now, to truly get the aspect of this and to understand why it is so important that he never forsake God and even at times he praised God, put yourself in Job's shoes for a second. Literally put yourself in Job's shoes. You have now lost your family, you've lost all your possessions, you've lost your livelihood, you've lost your house, you've lost it all. And then on top of that, now you've got these painful boils all over your body. So you're in major pain and suffering. Mentally, physically, every possible way you could be, you're in pain and suffering. I mean, literally, Job, at this point, you could look at him and say that Job was homeless. He was unclean. He had nowhere to go. And to be honest, if you put it in today's society, as much as we put on the fact of how pretty a person is supposed to be, Job was probably pretty ugly at this time. I mean, you think about it. He had bulls all over him. Probably busting open and everything else. He wasn't the best looking fellow there was. But the fact of the matter is, all this is going on in Job's life. Every bit of this is going on in his life. But yet Job did not stop loving God. He did not stop for 1 second loving God. But more than that, Job actually realized that it was God's will and not his. Job realized that it was God's will and not his. Sound familiar? How about the Lord's Prayer? Thy will be done. 2,000 years later, Jesus says that. In a sense, you could say that Job had the revelation of the New Testament of Jesus before Jesus. And like I said before, Job is actually someone that could have been around before Abraham. So technically, Job knew about the New Testament, knew about the promise of Jesus, knew about the great things of the promises before they ever came to pass. He knew, he understood them. He understood all of this. How great it was. Just because of his great faith and great strength in God. See, the fact is that God will and does allow Satan into our lives. To test us. Not to be mean, but just to test us. God knows that we love Him. God knows that. But for us to truly understand how great and wonderful God is, He allows Satan into our lives so that we can truly grasp hold of God. Grasp hold of Him and have that strong hold on God so that Satan loses again. That's where that memorization comes in. See, that's why reading the Bible and praying daily and that daily devotional time, all that is so important, because that way that you're constantly learning more about God and understanding more about Him so that when Satan does attack you, you're ready. Because God is a supreme power that none can mess with. Nobody can take Him down. But He is also the great teacher, and He gives us free will. So I ask you this morning, what is your test? What's going on in your life? What's Satan trying to attack you on right now, saying that you're not good enough for God? What's Satan trying to do to you? What is your test this morning? Whatever it might be, don't take it lightly. And don't take it lightly that it's Satan doing it. Because there's this realization about Christianity that sometimes we tend to forget. That for there to be a God in heaven, that means there has to be a Satan in hell. For one to exist, the other has to exist. Because if God in heaven exists, then Satan in hell has to exist. Because all four are mentioned in this book. All four are. But today, I mean, we want to put so much basis upon God's love and how great God is and all the wonderful things that God does. And that those things are so very important and they also are so very true. And we do need to put a basis on those things. But we don't need to put so much of a basis on them that we forget that God does have an enemy lurking around here these days. On this old earth, trying in some way, somehow, some fashion to get us to fail the test of life. That's what he does. Let me put it to you this way, in this sense. Satan is the second strongest being there is. He's the second strongest being there is. Only God is stronger. And by God, I mean the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as one. What I'm saying is there is a good and an evil. You hear it talked about in movies. You see it in movies. There's always the good guys and the bad guys. There's always something along that lines that happens. But there's always the good and the evil. And that's a reality in life. There is. So I ask you again, what's your text? What's the old devil trying to do to you? Because see, he can do some crazy things. He can do some messed up things. He can deceive us. He can make us paranoid. He can make us believe him. Look at Adam and Eve. The original sin in the Bible. He can be as beautiful as just about anything. The fact of the matter is the devil can and does take the shape of just about anything there is to deceive us and to make us forsake God and to make us fail the test of life. See, we want to put this factor. We want to put this factor on Satan and saying, "Okay, he's ugly. I see him. He's ugly. I don't have to deal with him. I'm staying away from that because that's an ugly thing. That's something I don't want to mess with." But the fact of the matter is the devil can be extremely beautiful. He can portray himself in that way. He was one of the most beautiful angels in heaven, if not the most. So he'll do anything he can to try to get to us. Because see, Satan really is the enemy that came to kill, steal, and destroy. Like he did to Job, he took all his possessions away, but that wasn't enough. See, Satan wants you bad and will do anything he can to get your life. Let me say that one more time, because there's a catch in that statement that I want you to know. Satan wants you bad and will do anything he can to get you. Do you notice the words he can? Anything he can? That's where we need to remember the great verses in the Bible. If God is for us, who can be against us? God sent His Son not to condemn the world, but to save the world. We are saved through His magnificent grace and love. We have a hope that God is always there and will never leave us. A hope that is true today. See, the fact of the matter is God is after our lives too. God is after them, but He's not after them to try to mess with us and deceive us. But God is after our lives and after our souls to save us from the flames of hell and give us the beauty of heaven. The fact of the matter is God can do great things for us. But the devil can only do what God allows him to do. Now listen to that. The devil can only do what God allows him to do. We all know the doors statement as far as it goes. God can open any door that no one can shut. And God can shut any door that no one can open. See, the thing about it is in that is you have to understand that if Satan is trying to get to you in some way, all you got to do is ask God, shut this door, get Satan out of here. Because when God shuts the door, He's got the keys. Nobody's getting the keys from Him. And that door is permanently locked. The devil can't get through you to that. In that way. Because God's got the keys. God's got the keys. So we can learn so much from Job. So very much. See, during this time, and we really have to look at the fact that Job had Satan running wild in his life. Had him running extremely wild in his life. So much to the point that we're talking about all these great things that God can do. But you have to realize there's something that what Satan was trying to make God do this whole time in Job's life. Satan was really trying to get in there to Job and make Job say to God, forget this guy. I'm not following you anymore. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. It's too hard. It's too messed up. I'm just not dealing with it anymore, God. Everything's been taken away from me. All this is going on. Forget it. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it anymore. Job never said any of those words. The worst times of his life, he never said any of those words. When it was hopeless, without a ray of cheer, Job still was reaching up for God to pull him out of the valley of the shadow of death. Because Job truly understood that God was with him. Job feared no evil. Job didn't fear the devil. He didn't fear him. No matter what, he didn't fear him. And Job knew that God's rod and staff were there to comfort him. Wow, it's such an amazing thing. If nobody just caught what I said, I just recited a verse in Psalms 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. Job knew the meaning of these verses, of this verse, long before it ever came. Job knew the true definition and the true meaning of those verses. Of that verse of the whole Psalms 23. He knew it all. Job, in essence, knew this Bible before it was ever written. He knew the Bible before it was ever written. So amazing. Job had that much strength. But let's think about this for a second even further. Job was going through things that we can't even imagine. Job was going through things in his life that happen today. There's people that lose everything. There's people that get sick from it. There's people that have been in Job's situation in present day times that have literally gone crazy because of all this happening. To put it bluntly, literally, Job was going through hell on earth because Satan was in his life destroying everything he possibly could. But here's the great thing about it. Job said to Satan, do what you want to do to me. Take what you want to take from me. Do it all. But as for me, I stand with God. Satan, you can do whatever you want to. Try and try and try again. But Satan, your victory is not your victory. It is my victory because I'm with God. Victory belongs to me because I stand with God today. Think about this morning. Think about that. Think about that and just honestly just praise God this morning because victory is already ours. Victory is already ours. As long as we stand with God, Satan can't defeat us because Satan can't defeat God. He can't defeat him. In no way, shape, form, or fashion can he defeat him. The fact of the matter is, it gets so much better. I mean, it gets so very much better. I mean, you think about it. This victory's already won. The diseases are gone. Sicknesses are healed. Pain and suffering is no longer. All those things are great. But what's so amazing? You fast forward to still in Job, verse 42, or chapter 42, verse 10, and listen to these words. And the Lord restored Job's losses when he prayed for his friends. Indeed, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Twice as much as he had before. Because Job held strong to God. He never gave up. He never, everything that the devil did to him put him, within inches of death. Job still was praising God. Job was still loving God. Job still knew everything that was going on with God, and still knew that no matter what, God wasn't going to leave him. That God was there. And because of that, what ends up happening to Job, not only does he regain everything that he lost, but he gets a double portion of it all. Literally, God said, you could literally say to this, that God said to Job, Job, you've been such a faithful servant. You've been so wonderful in sticking to me. And I want to bless you and thank you so much for that. That not only am I going to give you back what you lost, but I'm going to give you back a double portion of every bit of it. I'm going to give you back twice everything you lost. Talk about a blessing. Talk about a blessing this morning. So I ask you this morning, I ask you today, are you where Job was somewhere in your life? Is there something going on in your life? Is there struggles in your life that is just making things extremely difficult for you? Whether it may be something small or something big. You have to remember that Satan can turn something small that's just maybe irritating you right now into something big. Or maybe there's a struggle in your life right now that is really hard-pressed on your heart. Maybe there's just something that you just can't let go of, but you need to. The stress piling up in your life, so much to the point that it's pulling you down. The fact of the matter is victory is ours through Jesus. Jesus shed His blood on the cross for us, so victory could be ours. So as we have an altar call this morning, I ask you to really think about it. What are the struggles and worries in your life? What's Satan using against you right now to hold you back from God? What is it that he is doing to try to literally mess you up? To make things to where you don't feel worthy? What is in your life that it's happening to? But I ask you this morning, please be like Job and give it all to God. Don't let it hinder you anymore. Whatever it might be, I don't know what it is. But what's the struggle that's really hindering you this morning? See, the devil's second to God for a reason. Because he can't beat God. Doesn't matter how many times he tries, he can't beat God. And he's only second in your life when you allow him to be. Because when you've got God with you, he can only mess with you so far. And then God will intervene. Maybe you need to ask God to intervene this morning. So she comes up to sing. I just ask you this morning, show your faith in God. Allow Him to take over. Come this morning and just allow Him to take over in your life and let those struggles be His.